we have Bant Hexproof on the other.
We do. We have Hunter Burton on the right. He is playing Bant Hexproof. And Hunter Burton, he is a Pro Tour Top 8 competitor. Top 8 at Pro Tour Austin. The one that Brian Kibler did win. He top 8'd with Zoo. And he is 3-0 with Bant Hexproof, a deck that has had some success, as we see Eternal Evans's Pilgrim. And it's actually like upticking right now in that it hasn't won a tournament yet, but it keeps doing well.
Well, the more it's really good against mid-range decks.
Yes.
As, you know, it has trouble with aggro, a lot of trouble with aggro. But the more people become Jund and Junk decks, probably the better Bant will continue to do.
The thing that really put this card on the map and really turned things around was Unflinching Courage. That's the big deal here. Just basically the new Armadillo Cloak really just turned it around. And it's an easier to cast Gift of Orzhova. And we also see Voice of Resurgence in the deck as well. A lot of people have argued which card is better, like Voice of Resurgence or Loxodon Smiter. But we actually see in Hunter's list is that he doesn't have Fencing Ace at all. He actually just cut that so he could fit in Voice of Resurgence and the Smiters. So.
Right. So a Blood Artist from Zach Krizan.
No, Krizan.
Krizan. Yeah. So both these decks somewhat are goldfishing in the matchup.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, there's not. You know, yeah, there's not going to be too much attacking. And I mean, the Aristocrats, I think in general here is trying to just, it's goldfishing, but it's hoping to chump block a lot while goldfishing. And Blood Artist is going to be pretty important here. It kind of sets up the combo kills for Aristocrats.
So I think that in this matchup, Hunter is certainly the aggressive deck, as the Bant Hexproof deck, cannot play defense, as he's going to play another Loxodon Smiter. And it's Zach's job, basically, to try to stabilize with Blood Artist, with Boros Reckoner, and ultimately with a card like Blasphemous Act. And that's exactly what his draw step was for the turn. The big question here is, again, can he stabilize enough so he can set up a big Blasphemous Act to be able to kill Hunter before Hunter just comes across for too much damage and gains too much life? And now we're going to see a Lingering Soul start to get in the way here.
Yeah, so really, at this point, you know, Zach probably starts chump blocking pretty early. His main concern is that if one of these guys gets trampled by a Rancor or Unflinching Courage, that he has no way to control his own clock anymore. So I wouldn't be surprised to see at least one chump block, if not two, on this next attack.
I mean, he has to have the kind of balance, right? Where, you know, how much can I block versus how much can I set up a Blasphemous Act? That's the big thing he has to do, and while also juggling his life total.
Right. Aristocrats certainly is a deck that's not short on decisions to make.
That's true.
So we see the double Smiter swing in from Hunter Burton. Zach with Blood Artist and 2 Souls tokens, kind of deciding how much to chump here. In hand, he has a Sorin and 2 Blasphemous Acts, it looks like. So by chumping, he's making his own acts harder to cast.
Yeah, I thought, I wasn't sure. He drew a Blasphemous Act last turn, so I was kind of curious, like, did he need that one? But he already had one to begin with.
Right. So he chumped one of them.
So you see a little Blood Artist drain and gain, and now we'll see Burton follow up with Invisible Stalker, and now he's going to go with, oh wow,
another Invisible Stalker.
All right,
It's a pretty heavy commitment from Hunter Burton. I don't know. That to me seems like you're playing into Blasphemous Act a little more than I'd like to.
Yeah, I guess, like, you know, maybe his thought is, I just hope my opponent doesn't have Blasphemous Act, but that's obviously not the case here.
Well, it's like there's no need to be on that hope right now. You have such a good board presence.
Yeah, I would want to leave at least one follow-up, as you see Burton's going to take a look at this card.
Reading the Blasphemous Act, sure.
I have a feeling that he may have just, him reading Lingering Souls and him reading Blasphemous Act, it's pretty clear that he's not familiar with this matchup.
Right. And so there were a total of 7 creatures there, so that'll be a drain of 7 on top of the Blasphemous Act.
Yeah. And so now Lingering Souls is going to get flashed back. Burton's going to untap, he's going to draw. We know he has Spectral Flight in his hand, and he's just going to concede the game now as he put all his creatures onto the table, got Blasphemous Acted, and ends up losing the game because he has nothing to follow up with to put the flight on.
So a little bit of an expensive lesson there that you just learned.
Yes.
Okay, well that's what Blasphemous Act does.
So you're going to see Burton take a look here at his sideboard, and we'll do the exact same as he has 3 copies of Strangleroot Geist, 3 Rootborn Defenses, 2 Negate, 1 Selesnya Charm, 1 Ray of Revelation, 3 Nearhearth Pilgrim, and 2 Feeling of Dreads. Now, oftentimes with this deck, Matthias, it is, you know, basically a combo deck. You need your creatures, you need your pants to put on your creatures. How much can you board in and out to stop these things while also being able to have your deck do what it's supposed to do consistently? That's always a difficult thing. One of the only card in this deck that's not a creature or an enchantment is Spectral Flight, or excuse me, a Simic Charm, not Spectral Flight.
And that's a 2-of.
And that's a 2-of. Now Negate makes sense here, as Blasphemous Act is probably the most important card in the matchup on Zach's side. So maybe you just make that swap of Simic Charm for Negate.
Yeah, I mean, there aren't too many, you're playing your best creatures in the main. You typically side in cards like Strangleroot Geist against decks that are playing Edict effects, so Jund it's pretty decent against. I don't see too many other cards that he'd actually want to be using here. We haven't seen enchantments. It's not a near Heath Pilgrim matchup. That to me seems like a pretty straightforward sideboard. The Negate, maybe he could use Rootborn Defenses instead, but I think Negate's probably the best card there.
Yeah, it's like arguable like how you want to go about trying to beat the card Blasphemous Act. Like Negate is a reactive answer to that, assuming you can keep the mana open. Same with Rootborn Defenses. Strangleroot Geist is kind of a proactive answer in that it attacks, and then if he does Blasphemous Act, then
it survives.
It'll survive, yeah. And you can kind of build some board states where Strangleroot Geist and Voice of Resurgence is your plan against Blasphemous Act of like, go ahead, I have Geist left over afterward.
That said, I don't really like the Geist very much because it really trades with everything in Zach's deck.
Sure.
It doesn't get through very well.
I mean, Lingering Souls just makes it,
yeah.
It blows that plan up, yeah. That's true.
And you have to assume, Zach's deck's on 4 Lingering Souls. On Zach's side, in the sideboard, he has a 4th Blasphemous Act, and he has 3 Liliana of the Veil, which he probably uses all of those. Liliana's one of the best answers to hexproof creatures. I wouldn't be surprised to see that come in. He has 1 Electrickery, which is also pretty decent. It's a way to get an Invisible Stalker. I'm not sure how he uses it. It gets Pilgrims and Stalkers.
Yeah, I mean, it's not bad.
It's not bad.
I mean, I don't think it's the best card in the world, but at the same time, I think it's a card that you probably do have to bring in.
Right.
Just because you can't catch him.
Right. Outside of that, those are probably the main weapons that he has.
What do you think is favored in this matchup? I mean, we saw Hunter basically walk into all of Zach's traps that game. But I think now that he has a better idea of what Zach's deck is trying to do, do you think that things kind of turn around in his favor now?
I still don't think so. I still like Aristocrats in the matchup. One of the things that Bant has trouble with is a deck that can block, that can interact really positively with its creatures. And because Zach's playing a bunch of creatures at 1 and 2 that are resilient and hard to kill, I think Hunter's going to have a tough time actually connecting with his Hexproofers.
Sure.
So because of that, I like the Aristocrat strategy here.
Okay. I mean, I think that, Blasphemous Act is just a dynamic card in this matchup, but at the same time,
absolutely,
Hunter can get draws with his deck where, he doesn't have to play out a bunch of guys. He just plays out one guy and just puts a bunch of pants on him. So, that there's room for Blasphemous Act to just end up costing in between 5 to 7 mana, and then it's just not realistic to cast at all, depending on how the game goes. Because I don't think we're going to see
what
a
Hunter's
repeat.
going to hope is, the one creature, and just putting a bunch of auras on it.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to see a repeat performance of game 1, where he's just playing.
No, Zach kind of got the free win there.
Yeah, just playing a bunch of garbage, casting 2 Invisible Stalkers that have no real impact on the game. I don't think we're going to see that again. It's funny too because if he does just sandbag one of those Invisible Stalkers, he does have a Spectral Flight. He did have, a Spectral Flight to follow up with, and then he could probably just race.
Yeah. Well, he has a game plan. The problem is because he's been drained for 7, and Zach still has a full grip. It remains to see whether the race would be enough, but it would have given him a plan for sure.
Yeah. Maybe he top decks an Unflinching Courage or an Ethereal Armor, and then all of a sudden he's getting in for 5 points of damage, potentially some lifelinking as well, and then it's just a wildly different game. So.
Right.
I have a feeling that Hunter learned very quickly from his mistake and will turn it around.
That this creature deck also plays a sweeper.
Yes. So Burton is going to be on the play here for game number 2. Again, if you guys are just joining us, Cedric Phillips, Matthias Hunt here in the booth. We are in Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas. Round 4 of 10 here of our double standard open weekend here on the SCG Open Series. Feel free to join in on the conversation with us at SCG Live. Hashtag your tweets with SCGDFW. We'll be checking them all day. Matthias has his computer. I've got my iPad. We're at the ready to interact with you guys, so feel free.
Looks like Hunter has a 1-land hand he's considering keeping. It's got Voice into Geist, which is a pretty good curve. That said, he's on the play. I can't imagine he keeps a 1-lander. And he doesn't.
We're going to go to 66. At the very least, as we see a Cartel Aristocrat, a Boros Reckoner, a couple of lands over there for Zach. It looks like he's happy enough. And he's going to set it down.
It's got, the necessary lands and lands and spells that you can cast. It's going to be hard to ship back, especially when your opponent's on 6. So let's go over the threats that Hunter. So obviously his deck is about a creature and then putting auras on it. Let's go over what are the creatures he normally does that to.
So I mean, first and foremost are the hexproof guys, Invisible Stalker and Geist of Saint Draft. Those are public enemies number 1 and number 2. And then you just have other creatures in Loxodon Smiter and Voice of Resurgence. The idea behind Voice of Resurgence is, if you kill that, then I've got a follow-up guy to be able to put more enchantments on. But also, it's just a good card against aggressive decks and against control decks. It makes the control decks play in a way that they don't want to play.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I kind of feel like the important part of Hunter's deck are the Rancors and Unflinching Courages. The Aristocrats has the ability to chump block almost indefinitely. So say you have a creature, a guy with 2 Ethereal Armors on it isn't going to cut it, but an Ethereal Armor and a Rancor suddenly becomes a really relevant threat.
Yeah, Trample is the big deal in this matchup. Again, being able to push through cards like Cartel Aristocrat and Lingering Souls and all the random idiots that the Aristocrats can put in the way, the Vampires from Sorin, Lord of Innistrad. That's what the deck tries to do, is it tries to build up a critical mass of basically just small little creatures and then kind of overpower you with them by making Blasphemous Act cheaper, maybe pumping the guys with the Sorin Emblem, all of those things. So yeah, Trample plays a huge role in this matchup.
So Hunter's going to 5. He had a hand of Forest, Avacyn's Pilgrim, and some Voice of Resurgences that time. It's a hand, and I like that mulligan, because it's a hand you'd think you can keep, right? It has a turn 1 mana creature and has things to play. But it's kind of just playing a 1/1 into Grizzly Bears and had no game beyond that. Yeah. Which, at the end of the day, you're like, can I cast my spells? Yes. But then you have to think of, will these spells win the game? So that's almost certainly not.
This is one of the issues with the banned hexproof deck, is because how powerful it can be, and it is another deck that does have a nut draw. And this is a deck that can mulligan to 5 and actually get out of things. But as powerful as that can be, if it doesn't have, the pieces to the puzzle, then it's just like a super average aggressive deck, and that's just not going to cut it.
He's going to need a second land here, and I don't think he hit it. He hit a Smiter instead. Okay, sorry, he has a second land. I missed that in the opener.
All right, so here's a Voice of Resurgence. Deer Antlers cost a lot nowadays.
Yeah, he has the remaining cards in his hand are Spectral Flight, Unflinching Courage, and Loxodon Smiter.
All right, and here's a Cartel Aristocrat here for Zach.
So Voice of Resurgence, clearly the breakout card, I think, from the Pro Tour.
Yeah.
It's just powerful. It's powerful all around. It's a Grizzly Bear you're fine playing. It rebuys you a creature, not to mention the fact of what it does against control decks. The ability of casting a spell during opponent's turn probably won't show up too much in this matchup.
Yeah, this card is just all upside. There's no downsides to this card. Right. It's just, where is it well positioned in the format? That's the only question, as you're going to see a Glacial Fortress and the Loxodon Smiter here for Burton, and it's well positioned in a lot of different places. It's a very, very powerful card. It's just bad in your green mid-range mirrors. That's the only place it's poor.
So rather than throwing the Unflinching Courage on the Voice of Resurgence, Hunter elects to go with another creature, which I really like here. I think that you want to make sure that once you put Unflinching Courage on a creature, that creature is no longer going to be answered. And he's done exactly that by playing it on Smiter. By waiting to cast these cards on Smiter. Interestingly enough, the life gain doesn't seem particularly relevant here.
Yeah. So Hunter's going to untap. He's going to draw. We know about the Unflinching Courage. Not quite sure what the draw step was that turn.
I think in Avacyn's Pilgrim, either way, my guess is that he just makes the Loxodon Smiter fly and hopes to get a 3, maybe 2 if he's lucky, turn clock.
It looks like he's reaching for an Unflinching Courage here. So let's see what pathway he's going to craft here, because he can just play 2 spells in one turn. He can go Spectral Flight, Avacyn's Pilgrim, and the following turn Unflinching Courage. But at any point.
Yeah, and I'm not positive it's a Pilgrim. The thing is, if he plays Unflinching Courage, then the Smiter trades with Reckoner, and I don't think he wants that to happen at all.
Yeah, neither do I. So here's, it looks like he's thumbing towards Spectral Flight. Do you like it on the Smiter or the Voice better?
Smiter, faster, kills faster.
Okay.
I think that's almost all that's important right here.
Okay. So we're going to see an attack here for 6 in the air, and Zach's going to move down to 12.
Yeah, and I like that he's not, even if he has it, he's not going to cast the Pilgrim, because he's essentially learned that Blasphemous Act is a card, and that's how he loses, and he's going to try to avoid that happening if at all possible.
When you take a look at Zach's hand right now, he does have a Vault of the Archangel in his hand. Looks like he has multiple copies of Blood Artist, and I think there might be a Blasphemous Act looming over there as well. So he just needs to make sure.
Big game.
He needs to make sure he doesn't get combo killed.
Yeah, he could drop a pair of Blood Artists and then act everything and drain for 12.
Yep.
If that is a Blasphemous Act.
So
and then if he acts everything, he would drain for 12, shoot for 13. That would actually be lethal.
Yeah, it's a decent turn. Not so bad.
Yeah.
I mean, this is part of what this is what playing the Aristocrats is all about, right? Like, you have to balance like your life total, how you can attack, what you can attack with, what you can and cannot do. This is all part of it. So now Voice of Resurgence is going to get in front of Cartel Aristocrat. Voice is going to die. Here comes your Elemental token.
Yep, so 2/2.
I like the block there, personally.
Yeah, no, I definitely like the block. I'm not sure how much I like the attack. But he's going to play Vault, and we may see at least one Blood Artist come.
So he does have Blasphemous Act in his hand, as we saw him scroll through there. He also has an Obsidian that is going to be difficult to cast right now.
The reason I'm not sure I like the attack is that this game is all about that Luxodon Smiter.
Sure.
And, it's like Zach has to realize if he doesn't kill the Smiter, nothing else matters.
Sure.
So, right now, sure, he snuck in 3 damage, and that's great, but it might have been at the cost of some of his own life points, which is a cost I really don't want to pay if at all possible. He does have a couple tragic slips, actually. Okay. So maybe he's intentionally trying to turn. I think that wasn't a second. Yeah, it was a tragic slip, not a second artist.
Yeah.
So I think he was intentionally trying to turn on tragic slip here, which that's excellent.
All right, so Blood Artist is going to take care of this Loxodon Smiter that has a Spectral Flight on it. And after Hunter does take a look at this, it is -13, -13.
Mm-hmm.
And he'll gain and drain off of the Blood Artist as well.
And now the Elemental down to a 1/1. So you see Pilgrim, Unflinching Courage, and it looks like a land, so Hunter could drop his whole hand here, and that's almost the only play he has. It would be swinging with a 4/4 lifelinker, which is likely not big enough, but I'm not sure what else I'm not sure it's reasonable for him to wait for anything else.
Yeah. I think it's kind of like this all-in situation, right, where you just have to go for it. Like, this is what this is what you sign up for when you're playing Bant Hexproof.
You're on a mull to 5. You only really probably get 2 guys worth of Hexproof, and if he kills them both, then, well, he kills them both.
Yeah. You just have to make your move, and, like, it kind of sucks as he's going to play this Hallowed Fountain untapped. He's going to go down to 12, play Unflinching Courage, make the Elemental into a 4/4, but you just have to do it, and maybe next turn I draw a Spectral Flight.
Sure, that would be sweet. That would be what you'd hope to draw.
But you just have to go for it and just hope things work out.
Now, because of this, he is dead to a land, because Zach has a Blasphemous Act.
And Blasphemous Act costs 1 less for each creature that's in play. 8 -4 is 4, and the 1 red, it makes it 5.
It's yeah.
And that was the Blood Crypt off the top.
That should do it.
So we will see if Zach is able to put the pieces together to realize that
the land
that
act is lethal.
Yep. Especially when your Reckoner does get a free attack, which...
Sure, all right, now it's it's clearly lethal. Though, yeah, it was lethal before the attack, actually.
Yeah, just because of the Blood Artist in play.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is going to come into play. Here's your Blasphemous Act. Here's a bunch of damage, and that is Hunter Burton picking up his permanents. So Zach Krizan does win this match. 2-0 over Hunter Burton. The Aristocrats Act 2 defeats Bant Hexproof in what is probably a favorable matchup for the Aristocrats.